Watch this. No way!
How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well. It's been quiet season because it's cold over here. How's it over there? Is it
Yeah,
just as cold?
I'm in New York, just east of New York City. So yeah, we're down to what I would call unsatisfactory playing conditions. So the season's going to hibernate for a bit here.
And you're not a professional, are you? You're just a successful amateur.
Yeah, so the angle, my unique situation in the coaching profession is that I'm not a swing professional. I am a golfer, and I've chosen to coach golfers from a player's perspective, and I think that's the voice I've tried to develop over the last 8 years, and I think that's why some people resonate with my book and what I've been writing about on my website for years is that I come at it from the perspective of a golfer. So that's kind of my unique spin on things. So I'm not a swing professional. I know some things about the golf swing, but I don't teach it.
Bruce is our resident swing enthusiast, so he's the one that kind of does all these things for us. But I should introduce you, Jon, the owner of Practical Golf, which I suppose we'll try and get onto in a bit, the co-host of the Sweet Spot podcast, and I'm now Amazon best-selling author. So you are the second co-host of the Sweet Spot podcast we've had, you know.
Adam and I usually end up on the same podcast together eventually.
Yeah, you're about 90 podcasts late, though.
That's all right.
He was episode 70, and this is 100, probably 161. So,
well, he had the UK connection. He had the UK connection, so I'm not offended at all.
So, tell us, Jon, a little bit about where it all started. Tell us a little bit about Practical Golf.
So, somewhere in the probably like 2014, as I was getting back into golf and getting better at it, I was just taking a look at what game improvement information was available to golfers online, and I wasn't really satisfied. I felt that the golf swing was everywhere, and that's all people talked about, and that was really no different than how it was when I was a junior golfer. And I just felt that there were topics that I was passionate about, I had some expertise in that weren't being covered. So I just bought a web domain and started typing articles about those topics. They weren't very good at first, but I got, a few people reading them, and I refined my ideas along the way. And ultimately it led to me to the four main topics that I focus on, which are ultimately became the book, The Four Foundations of Golf. So I kind of started at it as a bit of an outsider, trying to remind people of, I think, things that a lot of golfers figured out over the years. But if I felt I could communicate it in a way that was very simple and people could identify with, then I could get them to change their habits and get better at golf. So that was kind of the genesis of the idea.
So yeah, tell us a little bit more about what you mentioned at the start there, Jon. So you said you kind of taken a few years away from the game. Am I right in thinking now you're a very accomplished golfer, +2 handicap or so? Have you always been pretty handy, and then you took some time off and kind of fell out of love with the game? Is that the backstory there?
Yeah, I think I was I was a kid who was obsessed with every sport. So I played a lot of different sports. And when I came to golf at 12 or 13, I was like, wow, this is something that I just, really got bit by the bug. And that was the exact moment when Tiger went pro. Right. So it was a perfect time to get into golf. And yeah, I got very obsessed with the game. I got pretty good. I'd say I'm a much better golfer now than I was in high school. I was the captain of a very mediocre golf team. I think at my best at those days was probably like a 3, 4, 5 handicap, something like that. I played a little bit in college. And when I say a little bit, I mean one tournament. And then I didn't necessarily quit. I just kind of stopped playing for a while. I was living in New York City. And then I had this unfortunate spell of probably 7 to 10 years where when I did get to play golf, I didn't really enjoy it much. I expected too much of myself. Wasn't a very happy golfer. And, ultimately, like when I moved out of New York City, became a father and could get into the game again, that's where I kind of figured out or undid all of that damage I had done to myself. And as I got to scratch level, I'm like, okay, I think I've figured a few things out. Maybe I can help some other golfers because I know exactly what they're dealing with because I dealt with it all those years and still deal with it. So yeah, I was an okay junior golfer, but nothing exceptional.
And what is it that you think that changed for you? What is it that was the real light bulb moment where you thought, okay, this is it?
There's probably several along the way, but I think one of the things that I had to balance, and I call it kind of my formula for golf happiness, is when I could align my expectation level with the amount of time and effort I was willing to put into the game and make sure those were at a nice balance. That's when things started clicking for me. That's when I really started playing better, stopped losing my temper as much, felt more, I just had more enjoyment as well. And I kind of finally came to terms with what I wanted out of golf and what I was willing to put into it. And I think that formula is different for everyone because not everyone has unlimited time to practice. Some people can only play 5 times a year. So, I found that version of golf happiness for myself and continue to work at it. And I wanted to share some of that with other people. So that's really one of the main things I want to do, with my site, my book, our podcast, anything, is I really want people to have a healthy relationship with golf. And of course I want them to get better too, but you can't do the second thing without the first thing.
Yeah. I find that like expectations is a difficult thing, isn't it? Because
it is.
My expectation levels change daily. Like I have, like I listen to that story of yours, and I think, I go through periods where I feel like, my expectation levels are dropped because I'm putting in less effort, and then all of a sudden that frees you up, and you have one good round, and all of a sudden I feel like I should be a scratch golfer, and then I put stress back on myself. So how do you think that people can maintain an acceptable expectation level?
I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about it, through statistics showing people what are reasonable outcomes for different skill levels. I think in your instance, when you're dealing with that daily, weekly, or even monthly fluctuation of golf, like the game is very, very volatile. And even for the pros, you look at a PGA Tour player's full year and you look at the range of scores that they have. You're going to see for certain players, you get scores as low as 62 and scores as 80, 81, 82. Like, what do you think they're thinking? Yeah. I've seen said there's pro golfers who shoot 63 and then 80. And what do you think's going through their head? And they're the best in the world. So, understanding that no matter how good you get at this game, there's always going to be that volatility of the golfer that shows up from day to day, week to week, or month to month, and knowing that's okay. Like I tweeted out recently I asked people to give me their lowest score, their highest score, and their handicap over the last year. And we got like an insane amount of responses, and all of them were like 20, 30 plus stroke differences. Same with me. So I think just letting go and accepting that, that this game, it will Jekyll and Hyde you. And there's going to be months where you feel confident, weeks you feel confident, and then all of a sudden it could just go away. And I think where golfers struggle is that then all of a sudden they start trying to change everything. They're trying to change their swing, their approach to the game. And I call that kind of like switching lanes in a traffic jam, and you're kind of getting nowhere. And of course, you want to be working on the right things, but even if you are, that it's going to happen. So that's one of the best ways I can explain the answer to that question is just letting go and accepting that this game is crazy.
Yeah.
for lack of a better word.
But it's interesting, the way you put it there, talking about enjoying the game more. I mean, I think you mentioned it in a tweet a few days ago, like one of the great aspects, or I guess defining features of golf, is that it can offer you so much. There's the camaraderie, there's the travel, going and seeing different courses, the competitive element, the history, course architecture. There's so many almost discrete areas of this game, and yet everyone wants to play it better. And it's hard to really think of many other sports or just general kind of human endeavors where people can have such dysfunctional relationships with something that they should really enjoy. I mean, we recorded a podcast with Martin Eds a couple of weeks back, who mainly looking at it from the sort of swing side of things, but he was just laughing at how there are so many golfers out there, not just professionals at the absolute top of the game, but golfers of every ability who have, pushed a bit too hard. Maybe their expectations have gotten a little high. They've tried to chase after improvement with maybe a little bit too much enthusiasm, and all of a sudden find themselves not being able to hit the ball, not being able to put together a score, and fundamentally not enjoying it. And I don't know what it is about golf, whether it's just the sheer number of variables there are involved in the game, and how many things you're trying to manage and kind of hold together in this very fragile arrangement that can make it so crazily varied in terms of the peaks and the troughs that you have.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated when I play golf with people from all different walks of life. I've gotten to play with like ex-pro athletes, like really accomplished business people, and just really like outside of golf, like really high performance type people. And then you see them on the golf course, and everything they're able to do in their professional career outside of golf just like literally goes out the window.
Yeah.
They're losing their temper, like everything that makes them great at what they're known for disappears in golf. And I've always found that fascinating to me, because this game has a way of like humbling literally just about anyone, even the pro golfers. Like I think one of the best examples recently was, I figure it was a 2021 when Tiger made a 12 or 10 on number 12 at Augusta. And it was just like a moment where everyone was like, oh my God, the wheels, like I've been watching Tiger obsessively since I was a kid. I don't think I've ever seen the wheels come off like that. And then he made like 5 birdies in a row, of course, but it just like, he looked totally lost, and just golf did it to him too. So, it's a crazy game, but like you said, there's so many different ways. There's all these like little sub niches of golf now that are very cool, and different ways to enjoy it and be enthusiastic about it. But you have to temper that with this, like, well, how good do I want to get? How hard do I want to push it? And that's something I always ask myself throughout the season. Like, are you having fun? Like, I compete a lot. And so, like this summer, I pulled out of a few tournaments because I felt myself getting burnt out. And I'm like, I'm not playing to be a pro golfer. I'm not good enough. This is for recreation, even if it's, serious competition. So if I'm not enjoying it right now, I'm just going to kind of take a step back. So I have to continually ask myself that question too. Is this fun? Am I enjoying this?
Well, it's an interesting one that you talk about, because it's kind of one of the reasons that I was keen to get you on the podcast, because I saw a tweet that you put out, kind of 7 ways to practice, I think what it was. Because I find myself, I think I represent a large band of golfers in the world that are not afraid to practice, but it's poor practice, and I feel like I've come from a background where I've played a little bit of rugby, and you turn up and the coach says to you, right, today you're doing this. Okay, that's fine. I'll go off and do that, and you do it, and maybe makes you better, but it kind of, you get told it and you do it. Then you come into the world of golf and you just go to a driving range because that's what everyone does, and you pick up a 7-iron, you hit it because that's what everyone does, and then obviously after 4 swings you hit driver for 56 balls, and then it's all over. You go home and you don't really learn much, and maybe you get in a groove because you're just smashing balls every 30 seconds. But I feel like, I mean, you and Adam have done a fantastic job of trying to get information out there, but there's not an incredible amount of information on how to practice well, which is, I suppose, something that kind of holds a lot of golfers back.
Yeah, it's something I struggled with as a junior golfer. I would hit hundreds of balls and as you said, get into a groove where I was a good ball striker, and I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to go out there and tear this place apart, in my next high school golf match, and it would just be a total disaster. So, the mistake I made and other golfers make is I was not preparing myself for golf. I wasn't really engaged. I was just kind of rifling through every ball. Like, what chance do you have to do that on the golf course? I wasn't thinking. I didn't have a target. I just hit. And yeah, that's the unfortunate part about golf versus other sports, is that, there's more straightforward paths to success, I believe, in other sports versus golf. And it's hard to put my finger on what exactly that is about golf, probably because the golf swing is complicated. But, a lot of the stuff that Adam has talked about in the practice manual and his awesome, website, and we discussed together on our podcast, is, for the golfers who aren't necessarily taking lessons, what can you do to be engaged properly and challenge yourself and give each shot more meaning? And more importantly, pay attention to the feedback and make these little adjustments that are going to be necessary on the golf course. So this is like a super in-depth topic. Obviously, I can't summarize it in a couple of minutes. But, what I believe are kind of the cornerstones of effective practice is that there's certainly proper engagement on each shot. You have an intention, and that could be as basic as your target. Maybe it's just one or two swing thoughts, but there's enough focus on the shot rather than just kind of what I would call zombie range sessions where you're not really thinking about what you're doing. There's some type of feedback process after the shot. I talk about this in the book. There's a list of things that I go through every time I hit a shot. For me, it happens quickly because I'm used to it. Where did I strike it on the face? How was my ground contact? What did the ball flight look like? Did it start right or left of my target? How was the curvature? How was the trajectory? Where did it end up compared to where I intended to? So I'm looking at all this stuff and I'm taking it in. I'm saying, okay, do I need to make an adjustment here? No. Okay, let's hit another one. And if you watch a PGA Tour player practice with their TrackMan, that's what they're doing too. You see them hit, they go back, they look at the screen, they absorb what happened, they go back into their routine, pick their target and hit. It's more regimented, it's more analytical, and there's a lot more feedback. And I don't think every golfer needs to go that in depth, but let's get a little bit more of that versus hit, and you're not really paying attention to what's going on or challenging yourself much.
Yeah, I guess you can get a long way there with certainly, the more the golfers who kind of taken to the game more recently in terms of clarifying some of those concepts as to what you need to do to produce good golf shots. You mentioned it there, hitting the ground in the right place, probably the number one place to start.
Yeah, it's very it's so simple. Like, we almost feel, I think we've done like 75 episodes on our show, and ultimately we end up talking about the big three over and over and over again. I'm sure some people get bored of it, but it really is that simple. What does this game ask of you? Can you strike it somewhere close to the center of the face? You do that with your irons and driver, you're taking care of like a lot of things. The club can do what it's designed to do. You're going to get distance, the proper spin and launch angle, all that stuff. Number two, with irons, which are the most important scoring clubs, can you make functional contact with the ground, hit the ball first, and then interact with the turf? And number three, which is perhaps my most important thing, is managing where that club face is pointing at impact. Is it too far open for right-handed golfer? Your ball's going to start to the right. If it's too far closed, it's going to start to the left. And that combination of your swing path will be how the ball curves. Yeah. That's it. Like, there's some other stuff. You could talk about angle of attack and other things, but, we keep coming back to those three things. And that's, I don't have any like complicated swing thoughts going through my head when I'm playing or practicing. I have a laser focus on those three things on every single shot. And then I look at the ball and I say, okay, that one started too far to the right. Let's hit some more and see if that continues. Okay, I have a pattern here. I need to figure out how to close my face a little bit. I will solve that through more of like an athletic feel. Some golfers might need help with that from an instructor. And I'm totally for golf instruction, getting technical help. But it's got to solve one of those three things. Not just like, hey, your swing looks a little funny at the top, let's make it look prettier. Is that satisfying the conditions at impact? If it is, great. If it's not, then you're just kind of doing it for the sake of doing it. I don't look at video of my swing. I video my swing maybe once a year just as a joke. I don't look at it. I don't need to, but that's the path I've chosen. I don't think I think if you are going to do that, then work with the coach and have a expert set of eyes look at that. But it all gets back to, can you answer the questions that golf is asking of you at the impact zone? And they are fairly simple if you know what to look for.
I was going to say,
I think our tendency is to complicate things for sure in this game.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about there is equally applicable, I guess, to the more novice golfer who's maybe just, everyone can get into it, just firing balls at a range, just getting into like a machine gun mode. But it's equally applicable to someone who is maybe overly analytical. I know I fall into that camp of just wanting to video almost every swing or just look at it from that outside kind of perspective. And there's plenty the problem of people there too. And it's something you mentioned on your recent podcast with, is it Rick Fair? Just like, you're getting so far away from the three basic things that are actually mattering in this game.
Yeah, I think if you're going at it on your own, and most golfers are, I think the number that always comes back is like 80 to 90% of golfers are currently not taking lessons, which I think is a shame. I think, if you want to, and I know golf's an expensive activity, but if someone said, I want to invest $600 in golf and a new driver or a series of lessons with like a really good pro who it fits your learning style, I would say invest it with the pro. You'll get way more out of that. But most people don't do that. So if you're on your own and you want to be productive with the time that you have, taking video of your swing and looking at stuff, like I could video my swing and find 20 different things that, as much as I know about the swing, I'd be like, oh, my face is really shut at the top. My takeaway is really on the inside. I roll my wrists open at takeaway as well. Sometimes I go past parallel. I don't like my knee bend on the way back. Like I could pick out 20 things that I don't like about my swing aesthetically. But to be quite honest, like I don't give a crap because I let that go a long time ago. I'm more concerned with, I'm going to hit this ball and I'm going to see what it does. And I'm going to use the proper feedback tool. So a beginner golfer would say like, just understanding like where you're striking it on the face. Like Adam's been talking about this forever and some other instructors have, like that can be transformational for some golfers. Like they have no idea where they're making impact on the face. Like just practicing with like that laser focus there. And I think there's an inner athlete in all of us. And you're like, oh, I'm striking that on the toe. I'm striking that on the heel. Let me try and make some adjustments. I believe if you have a more intent and focus on those things, rather than playing amateur swing doctor, you're going to get a lot farther with your ball striking. So it's, you asked me earlier, like, what can I do to practice productively? Like, those are some simple things that you could, your attention span is not unlimited in practice. And a lot of people spend their time on swing stuff. They look at YouTube videos and stuff like that. And, it just might not be relevant to their swing and they're working on the wrong things. So it's just, I think you're kind of taking a shot in the dark with that stuff, unless you are working with an instructor is my big caveat.
But I think then you can go awry. I think even working with an instructor, you can.
There are pro golfers going awry.
Yeah, like it's an easy trap to fall into, and something that Adam I think touches a bit on, like in his books, and the podcast that you guys do, like just on the strike side of things. Moving it around, if you're hitting it, like so many people have suffered with dreaded shanks, like just try and hit a few out the toe. It sounds pretty basic, but if you can move it around the face like that, that means you've got a pretty good control of what you're doing with the club.
Yeah,
you should be able to find the middle
though,
pretty easily.
It's really scary.
But you say that, look how many great pros there are though, who when they're just messing around on the range, they can just like shank it on demand. I think.
They can because
put up
exactly
a video of, like, how to hit pure shanks, and he can do it.
Perfect.
He doesn't, but he can do it if he wants to.
That's a perfect example because that's skill, which we talk about a lot. What separates like athletes in any field, the great athletes versus like the mediocre to poor ones, is like their skills unreal. You go like a basketball, football, hockey, any sport you take, you could take a version of what you just said, where you watch someone in practice doing something totally wild that they wouldn't do in a game, because they're in such control of their bodies and they can adjust their technique at will, that they could do anything. And that is one of the big questions that golf asks of you, is that I believe it's like the ultimate skill game. You got a side hill lie. How are you going to adjust your swing? The ball's sitting down a little bit in the rough. How are you, technically, what are the things you're going to have to do? Well, I'm going to have to get a little steep with my angle of attack, to make sure to limit the amount of time the club is interacting with the grass. Do you think that Rory McIlroy is thinking about that when the ball is deep in the rough? No, he's not. He's just doing it because his skill is insane. Now, that he acquires that skill from childhood and all these years hitting balls, and he's doing all these things that we talk about without realizing it. He's done the technical work, and I'm sure he's done a ton of other work practicing and messing around, where his skills and all the other guys on the tour, it's just off the charts what they can do. But unfortunately, I think most golfers believe that it's the technique. What does my swing look like? All that stuff is what is driving their success in the game. And of course, their technique is sound, but I believe there's something you can't see. You're not going to see it on the slow motion camera that's inside of them. And I think that's what, as I've gotten better at this game, that's what I believe I have. I don't really understand my technique, to be quite honest with you. I couldn't explain to you why I hit golf shots the way I do.
I guess it comes down to intention, though, doesn't it? And I think so many of us fall into that trap of seeing someone like Rory McIlroy's got a beautiful free-flowing swing, and we put the intention as, I want to swing the club like that. And he's not creating that swing with that intention. He's saying, I'm trying to hit this ball with a high draw and nice and shallow, or maybe even more simply than that. And that is the motion and the way he organizes his body to produce his intended outcome. He's not trying to move the club through all these different positions and create emotion like that. And yet so many people, so many instructors, I guess, as well, will reverse engineer and say, well, if we could just try and swing it like him, then you'll get good results. And it's like reverse engineering it, but it's not effective.
Yeah, I think the state that, so I for a long time played golf in like I would say frozen over the ball, like, what are my 5 checkpoints I'm going to hit on my swing before I hit this shot? And that always bothered me, because in every other sport I played, I reacted in the moment. Like, you're playing basketball, the opponent's coming at you. I'm not going to be thinking about what my elbow's doing on the jump shot. I'm trying to get the ball out of my hand as soon as possible so it doesn't get blocked. So it always frustrated me that I could get better at other sports that were like faster and in the moment, and I didn't have time to think about that stuff. And I got to golf, I'm like, why the hell am I thinking about all these things when I'm doing it? And as I got better at this game, and the style of coaching that I'm trying to get people in when they play golf is, when I play now in a tournament under pressure, whatever, I'm trying to just target, routine, hit, go, and get myself in that state that I felt in other sports. And that's when I play my best. I find when you see the golfers who are stuck over the ball, what are they thinking about? They're thinking about their takeaway and the top of their swing, and they're thinking about what their body has to do to hit the shot. And I don't think that's going to solve the problem for most people. So you can't just achieve that overnight. That's like a mindset shift. It's in the way you practice. It's your routine. It's how you challenge yourself in practice. That's hard to do, but like that I think is like the holy grail of golf, is that you play the way in a game where you're reacting to your target and you're initiating your swing freely. And as you said, the way Rory swings, he's totally free. Obviously best in the world at it right now, but I think people can achieve that on their own level with their own versions of their swing on some level, and get away from like the swing doctor technical thoughts on the course, where they just kind of get up, hit, and go. And I think the best version of yourself, and you'll access your skill more often if you can play that way.
I think that's the thing about golf, isn't it? It's kind of a slow poison. I mean, it gives you too much time
Exactly. That's the problem.
To think about what it is. I think if you said to someone, run up to that ball and hit it 150 yards, they'd kind of get it done in some way, shape, or form. But the fact that you just allow them all the time in the world to do it is kind of killer. Bruce, you'll know about this. Wasn't there something when Tiger was in his pomp where they like timed him from address to impact, and it was like it was within 0.1 of a second for a whole season?
Well, I mean, it wasn't that outrageous, but yeah, like he had very fine tolerances. What you're driving at is right. Yeah. Like he had a very, very consistent routine. And I remember watching a video that Scott Fawcett made of him at the 2000 US Open, and it was all roughly around about 13 seconds, I think, from being behind the ball, stepping in to actually moment of impact. It was very, very consistent. Not that scary level of consistency.
I prefer
if someone
my
could do that for within a 0.1 of a second tolerance for 30 events a year across 4 rounds and 70 odd shots around, that would be bonkers. But yeah, the principle's right. Like he's so calm and clear, I guess, in his mental chatter in terms of what he's trying to do, that manifests itself. The outcome of that is that he's just very, very consistent time over the ball or time walking into the shot. It's something that you can see and really observe very clearly, I think, with a golfer who's like in the zone or in full flow, as he was obviously for such huge swathes of his career. But creating it, I think, is again, it's a sort of outcome. It's not something I think you can consciously try and create. That's a byproduct of being very clear in how you're approaching the shot, I think.
Well, you make a good point. I think one of the struggles is that we do have all this time in between shots. And I like to break it up into like 2 separate phases almost, is that the time in between shots, if I'm playing with my friends or even in a tournament under pressure, like that's my time to like kind of enjoy the activity and kind of soak in the experience. Maybe it's some time to let some emotion out or refocus my mind. But for the most part, like if I enjoy walking the course, like the time in between shots, I'm kind of like zoning into the experience of the fun of golf. And then when I get to my ball, then I have the process where there's an analysis of the target, the shot, routine, go. And yeah, I think it's something you can pay attention to and practice and get better at. Like I believe that the analysis that Scott did on Tiger's pre-shot routine and that people have done it on Annika Sorenstam, same thing. There was a study on the European Tour where they analyzed how much time players were spending before shots over the ball. And the more consistent players were making more money and having better outcomes. And more importantly, the ones with shorter pre-shot routines were better as well, which is a very important takeaway. So I do have this in my book, and I'm not the first person to advocate a pre-shot routine, but everyone can have a routine that kind of gets them in that zone. I call it like an autopilot state, and initiates that athletic response that I'm looking for, where you're not even thinking. It's like driving a car and you're not thinking about where your hands are on the wheel and pumping. You're just doing it because your body knows how to do it. And that's what I try and hang my hat on in tournament play is that my routine over the ball while I'm putting, hitting a drive, like I'm initiating this autopilot sequence that is getting me to just hit the damn ball and not worry about all that other crap that's going to get in your head in between. Because the more time you spend over the ball, the less confidence you're going to have, I believe. So
it's certainly easier said than done, though, isn't it? I mean,
this has taken me years to do. Like, about it? So I played, the Chasing Scratch guys. I assume they're awesome guys, and I went to their event recently and played some golf with them, and they talked to me afterwards. They're like, "We were looking at your putting routine. It's like you're a damn robot. Like it's the same thing every time." I'm like, "Yeah, it's taken like many years to construct that routine, but I found something that was like truly unique to myself. Like what I think about, the way I align myself, it all has a purpose. It doesn't take very long, but I've thought about it in practice. I've adjusted it in play and saying like, okay, I think I'm taking too many practice strokes. This doesn't need to be too long, or the way I read the greens and what I think about, I play songs in my head. That's unique to me, and it gives me comfort, and that could be different for someone else. But it's something to like start thinking about and paying attention to. A lot of golfers just step up to the ball and they'll do things 20 different ways during the round. And I'm not saying if you do the same thing every time, it's going to guarantee you a better result, but I think it's going to give you a better chance.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is not to do something for the sake of doing it. Like I've seen some golfers who have routines where they're like, I'm like, okay, they're doing this for the sake of doing it. And I was that golfer for a long time myself. So I think every little part of the routine, whether it takes 15 seconds, has to have a purpose. How you choose the target. And this is what I try and do in my book. I'm trying to give people ideas on this so they can coach themselves. But there's a lot of elements that go into it, and you can't just do it overnight. It has to be built over a period of time, I believe.
Do you think with the amount of information there is out there in the game today, you mentioned that study of analyzing the routines of European Tour pros, or the amount of stats that there is out there now, and tracking stats, not to mention the whole paraphernalia of kind of instruction and gizmos that accompanies like the swing itself. Do you think it makes it a bit harder for people, particularly for the amateur golfer, in a way, in that it's a lot of noise and it's a lot of information out there that, might be driving at some important themes in the game, but it's really taking people away from like that mythical art that really is a fundamental part of golf. It is an art of like hitting shots, being in the right headspace, I guess, in general terms, to hit those shots and kind of plot your way around a golf course. And it's something that you need to kind of be authentic with, as an individual. You need to like find what works for you, and this huge, massive information that's out there can maybe encourage people to become maybe too sort of cookie cutter in their approach to things.
Yeah, I think absolutely it can. I think too much of anything could be a deterrence in golf or anything else you pursue. So I am all about like boiling it down to the most simple things, because I think to play your best golf, you have to have simple thoughts on the course. So if you're doing something like, let's say you were deep into stats, and then that was putting you in this headspace on the course where you're like, well, I have a 27% chance of making this putt, so I have to, like, no, don't. Yeah. The whole reason I give people statistics or explain like Mark Brody's work and strokes gained is just to let people understand, like, okay, this is an optimal way to select targets. Or if you miss a green from 150 yards and you're just off the green, like understanding that's still a good shot. So there's always a pro and con to all this stuff where like, I can present a lot of stats to you and I want them to give you like help with expectation management and target selection. But at the same time, I don't want it to be cumbersome to your mindset when you're on the course. So this is where people have to learn to be their own coaches. You can get all the information and the tools from people, but you have to you have to try to do a good job of filtering out stuff. And I think nothing's more problematic than watching too much swing stuff. That to me is there's just so much information on the swing available. And I think they're all great coaches offering good stuff, but you can't consume it all. It's not going to make you better just because you watched it. Same thing with other, you got a million gadgets, launch monitors, stat tracking devices. They can be helpful. They can also be detrimental if you get a little too advanced with them. So I prefer simplicity. I'm not against technology. I think it can give you really clear indications on what you need to work on. But you have to continually ask yourself, is this making the game more complicated for me? And if the answer is yes, then I believe you need to tone it down.
Yeah, I think the stats one is a good example there, because it's, as you mentioned, John, like the expectation management element of it, I think is really beneficial. Like knowing that,
absolutely,
the sort of PGA Tour dispersion from 150 yards is actually not as good as you'd think it would be. And so, what right does a scratch handicap or a 5 or a 10 handicap have to think that they should be hitting the green every time from 150 yards or certainly knocking it close? Well, I think where it sometimes, not necessarily through the author's fault, but just it can kind of, like anything in this day and age, it can kind of be taken to its extreme. Is I know there's a big trend now, for example, of just trying to hit driver everywhere. Like the short par 4 is just almost, from an architecture standpoint, people are like, well, no, there's no strategy involved. Just smash driver at the green, get as close as you can to it. That's the way to do it. But actually, I think, it's more nuanced than that. If you've had a terrible day with the driver, up to the 9th hole, and then you stand on 10 and it's a short 4, and you're dogmatic with adhering to the stats and thinking that you need to just get dog out again and try and take a shot at the green. It's like, well, that's not the emotional intelligence that you need to play the game well.
I think there's two sides to the coin, and I know there's always been this like kind of headbutting between golf course architecture, like what the architect intended, and modern strategy and math. And I think it's kind of like a choose your own adventure type thing. You could, I would say if I'm, playing in tournaments and stuff like that, and my absolute goal is to shoot the lowest score, then yeah, I am going to use the analytics and the data to my advantage. So there's two elements to that. You're saying that scenario with the driver on the short par 4. So as a tournament player,
generally anywhere, I'd say. Yeah,
well, yeah, but it's not the answer everywhere. There's definitely a rubric for making the decisions. But there's the strategic side and the emotional side. And I think what good strategy does in golf is it removes the emotion. Like if you are looking to play your best golf, golf is an emotional game. And unfortunately, like that is one of the reasons why I think, if you're looking to play your best, making decisions based on emotions versus saying like, okay, I'm committed to doing this, I'm going to stick with it. And with the understanding that it's not always going to work out. So yeah, it's hard because I know there's a million millions of golfers out there who don't want to play the game that way. And I think that's fine too. So I guess the question is like, what are your goals? Are your goals to shoot the absolute best score every time out there and lower your handicap and squeeze every bit of performance you can out of this game? Then yeah, like I'm someone like that, and I do pay attention to the numbers, and I make my plans and I stick with them. I like doing that. If you're not like that, if you're saying like, hey, I enjoy playing multiple golf courses and playing them in a variety of ways, like your scenario, like I want to hit iron off this tee because I just feel like it's not the right decision right now. Like, I think that's fine too. Is it the right strategic decision mathematically? I don't know. I couldn't say.
Can you play golf with maths though? Would be my point there. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whether absolutely. You can, but I don't know if you can, because like, with the sort of hit driver, stats on hitting driver on holes where there's like, I think the calculation, the rubric you mentioned there is like, if there's less than 65 yards, or sorry, if there's more than 65 yards between penalty areas, i.e. water hazards, out of bounds, hit your driver. I don't know if I'd question that on the basis of, taking a sample of 10 or 20 or 30 rounds or 30 shots down a hole like that isn't how the game's necessarily played. Like, you can wake up one day and feel like you've got driver on a rope and play the first few holes and, it's all going well. And other days it's just like, okay, for one reason or another, I'm just not comfortable with it. And I can't, no matter how hard I try, if I take myself out of this and say, well, no, like if I just hit 10, 30 drivers on a range or whatever it is, they'd all fall within that 65-yard window. I should just commit myself to hitting driver on this hole, despite the fact that it's not felt great so far today. That to me seems like maybe it's not that intelligent from a decision-making standpoint.
Well, I would question you this. Like, let's take another sport. Let's say, basketball, for example. Coach has a plan, we're running this offense, and certain days like, oh, we're just not feeling it. We're not shooting it as well. Are they going to tear apart the offense over that? Probably not. They're going to say, we're playing 82 games this year, and every night we are going to stick with this strategy because we believe this is the philosophy that is going to give our team the best performance. And I will coach you this, but some nights it's not going to feel great. I don't think they throw it out of the water, and golf is a little different than that because it's a singular game. But Yeah, I mean, it's not that you're going out there with like a calculator in your hand. It's more of an understanding that, well, in that situation, you want to take the iron. Is your iron that much straighter?
Well,
So
yeah,
I've done the testing on that.
day. Yeah.
Well, how do you know on that day? That's the question.
I mean,
I suppose for me, I mean, every club. I know you're going to push on this, Bruce, but every club is, you know, the way the ball goes is a function of face and path and strike, but face and path. And if your face and path are off on a particular day, no matter what club you've got in your hand, your face and path are off. Now, there is an argument, I suppose, to be said that if your face and path are off with a 7-iron, it's going to do less damage than, say, with the face and path being off with a driver in terms of dispersion left and right. But I don't know if they're off.
But the other element in that, and again, I used to be the golfer that laid back everywhere because I played with a lot of fear. And what I didn't realize is that when you do, so let's say you're making the decision between a driver and like a 4-iron, for example. So let's say a typical golfer hits their driver 250 yards, 240, and they're hitting their 4-iron 190. So there is the dispersion element for sure. And that absolutely has to come into play because we want to keep it in play off the tee and not get into penalty areas. But there is the distance element. And I think what we didn't understand for a long time is of how important that was, is when you take that 4-iron, like you're giving up 60 yards. So you might hit that straighter and you will hit it straighter, but now the next shot is more challenging. So this is, I think, the beauty of the game for me. And I realize people are coming at this from a different perspective. Like, it sounds like you look at this type of analysis as taking away like the art of golf. I'm fascinated by it. I think it's very cool. And that's why I think there's different ways you could approach the game. But the math on it is like it's not like very complicated. Like Mark Brody's work, he ran simulations of millions of shots and stuff like that. And like, there is this give and take between driver and shorter clubs. And yeah, there are certain days where you're wiping the driver all over the place and maybe you got to put it in the bag, you know, maybe you got to make that decision. However, not that, because I think the problem with like recreational golf, like if I separate that differently, like you look at recreational golfer stats, like most are hitting it between like 220 and 250 off the tee. So we don't have people with like prodigious length playing this game at the recreational level. So for those golfers if we're talking about distance and driver, if they start taking shorter clubs out of the bag, the game is that much more challenging for them than the pro who's deciding between 320 and 240 off the tee, because they're going to hit their irons great. But the average golfer, they don't have a lot of swing speed. And you put a 4-iron in their hands for an approach shot versus an 8-iron, they're going to struggle a lot more from those distances. So yeah, like there is an inherent math element to this game that if your goal is to shoot the lowest score, and I'm sure you're not like, I sound like Fawcett or Brody, but I've done the research myself. I've looked at the work. If that's the point of the game, to shoot your lowest score, like, yeah, I think you can do some analysis. You don't have to go crazy with it. And that doesn't mean hit driver everywhere and try and bash it. There's plenty of holes I don't hit driver because it doesn't make sense. But yeah, I think I view that as one of the beautiful things of the game, is looking at the risk and reward off the tee. I think approach shots, you get more conservative for sure, but and I've changed my thinking on this too. Like I hit driver a lot, and that's made me a better golfer because I committed to it. I worked on it and I embraced it. And on the days I didn't feel comfortable with it, I stuck with it because I felt that was important too. But yeah, listen, I've heard plenty of the opposing arguments on social media for years. Like that's where I've stand on it based on my experience and the work I've done.
Yeah, I don't, sort of say that just to kind of be contrarian, and more just, like the stuff that's not as easily measurable, I guess.
Yeah, there's stuff that you can't measure for sure. Absolutely. There's a human element to this game that we still can't put our finger on. I agree with you.
Yeah. And I guess there's it's part of human nature that the stories of like, Tiger Woods not pulling a driver or pulling one driver the week he won the Open at Hoylake, and just this is like a masterclass in like course management and taking trouble out of play and controlling the irons well at distance well with his irons, like, or was that just imperious iron play of a different order that you see very, very rarely? Or another example like Jack Nicklaus when I think it was a US Open where he snap hooked a couple of drivers early on in the round and was like, right, I'm just leaving that in the bag and I'm going down to 3-wood or 1-iron. And those kind of stories that you hear about, is that just really intelligent and course management and emotional self-awareness rather than defeatism, and how you balance that with the mathematical element that you're talking about there, John. I think it's just part of the appeal and the intrigue of the game. It's difficult.
I think you can look at it very nostalgically. I think you can look at that Tiger round and think, you managed to do it without a driver, or you can look at it very nostalgically, but you also can't look at any rounds in isolation when you're doing mathematics. So to give you, I'm the one in the cookie jar that likes the statistics and likes to do all those sorts of things. And I think, I think you're right, Bruce, in some ways that's, you have to have a feel. If you're not feeling the driver that day, probably for that day you should put it away. But actually, if you looked at it over 100 rounds and you continue to take driver over 100 rounds, that over time the better strategy would be to be closer to the pin, because everyone knows if it's a 9-iron or a 6-iron, from no matter where you are, there's better probability of getting the ball in the hole in fewer shots if you're closer to the hole. But I think you can't, like you say, if you're in the Open at Hoylake and you're not feeling driver and you just want to nut a 2-iron all day, then nut a 2-iron, just get it done. But I think if you looked at it over a macro scale, you're probably not correct. Would be my take.
Yeah, I mean, I just push back.
I love to be honest with you, I love those stories too, and I cited them like when I first started my site. That I remember watching that Open with Tiger with the irons. He had a plan, and he said, I am not going to shoot myself in the foot off the tee at this course. It's firm enough. I can hit my irons. And the reason he was able to do that is because he is the best iron player to ever walk the earth. He could make up for the lack of distance off the tee in that tournament because he was going to hit his approach shots and control the ball immaculately well. And Jack Nicklaus too, like, he had prodigious length. He was one of the longest hitters of that time. So he was able to use clubs less than driver off the tee and still compete against his peers because he was disproportionately long for his era. Would that happen today? I don't think so. I don't think Jack could do that today because his competition would be so immense with distance. I've spoken to golfers who've competed with Jack Nicklaus, and they told me, like, you just couldn't believe how far this guy hit the ball. It was incredible. He was so strong and powerful, and he could still outdrive someone with a 2-iron. Back then you didn't have athletes playing the game as much. And it was different. And now things have changed. And listen, I get that people like I'm a huge basketball fan. I was a big basketball fan when I was younger. I don't like watching basketball that much anymore because of what data analytics has done to basketball. I just see a bunch of people running back and forth, like hoisting up 3-pointers. And I can't watch it because that's not the basketball I watched when I was a kid. I have a hard time watching it. So I understand like why people don't like what data has done to golf and the driver thing and all that stuff. I get it. But like, I'm not here to like argue the math or anything like that. Like, it's, they figured some stuff out, and you can apply it on some level to recreational golfers if you want to. And if you don't want to, like, that's fine too. I think you don't have to play the game that way if you don't want to. I'm not here to like tell anyone to like enjoy golf a certain way. But if you're going to have like a hardcore discussion with me about like strategy and stuff like that, I'd be like, yeah, I think I would rely on the math more than feelings.
I think, I mean, I hate to go into the distance debate and things about the ball, but as long as as long as the ball doesn't spin like it used to, I think distance, hitting it far, Mark Brody will win. As long as you can overpower the course. But when the ball doesn't spin like it used to, and you can't get yourself in the trouble that you used to be able to get yourself into, I kind of feel like you're never really going to bring that back from people like, it's hard to argue that Matt Fitzpatrick put on basically 25, 30 yards with a driver over 2 years and then goes out and wins the US Open. It's if you can hit the ball further and be closer to the hole, golf is easier.
Yeah, and I think, but the issue is I'm not about the pro game. I'm not trying to help, I'm trying to help weekend warriors enjoy golf more and have some more fun. So what's happening at the pro level, I don't think it's translated over to the recreational game at all. You can look at the distance numbers, there's no distance explosion with average golfers. Because most people can't physically generate the swing speed. They're sitting at desks all week. They're not working out. Their hips are too tight. They're not strong enough. Most average male golfers are still swinging the club around 90, 95 miles an hour, where, tour players have figured out how to go to 120, 125. They've got all the training methods. Would that be harder with the ball that spins more? Maybe. I'm not, to be quite honest, I'm actually not even interested in that debate. I got involved in it for a while, and it doesn't really interest me that much what's going on in the pro game. I'm more interested in, what can the normal golfer do to optimize their game. And I think you could take a little bit of that stuff. Don't go crazy with it. And apply it to your game, and you'll hit it a little farther. You'll score a little bit better, and you'll be happier taking some more money off your buddies.
How do you find it, John, just with your own game there? Talking about helping the weekend golfer and a lot of the great resources you've put out there, which has made it, I guess, brought to light how you can play the game a little bit better. And how do you find that balance, wanting to go and compete yourself and shoot the best scores you can, travel around to these tournaments that you go and play in, but also helping others with that? Do you find there's almost like a split personality you need there to get the best out of your own golf and helping others? I know on the swing coaching side of things, a lot of coaches who say, it's really difficult. It can be really difficult to coach the swing and then go out and try and play myself because I can kind of be populated with these thoughts. But I'm guessing from the way you're teaching or coaching others and the bigger picture ideas you're talking about, maybe that jump isn't quite so difficult.
No, to be quite honest with you, when I tee it up with my buddies or in a tournament, I'm not doing anything all that much differently. I don't have my serious face on when I play in tournaments, and I don't have my serious face on when I play with my buddies. I'm literally just trying to have fun every time I go out there. Now, I can have fun playing in a stroke event and putting my game on the line and knowing that I might blow up and play like crap and that feels bad. I've accepted that, and it's happened to me, and it doesn't feel great, but I've gotten over it. But I genuinely enjoy competing. That version of golf is fun for me. But the decisions I make, what clubs I use off the tee, the targets I choose for my approach shots, my pre-shot routine, my mental state, it's not all that different, to be quite honest with you. I'm not in this. I used to be this golfer who white knuckled it. Even when I was playing with my buddies, I would take it so seriously and I want to play so well. And if I didn't play well, I would lose my mind. And that's not the type of golf I want to play anymore. It didn't make me happy, and it didn't make me any better. So to answer your question, the advice I would give someone playing in a tournament or around with their buddies, is not all that different. It's mostly in the context of improvement and lowering scores for sure. And there's certain things I would want you to do, which is I want you to be a little bit more regimented with your emotions. I want you to make smarter strategic decisions, not all the time, but if you were someone who made, 10 big course management mistakes during the round, if we can get that down to 5 mistakes, that's great. You're going to see progress. Or if we can get you to stop losing your temper a few more times, or maybe establish some type of routine, then that's, I think, a huge win. And for sure, my style of coaching is a little more analytical and it gets certain players interested in it. And for others, it might not be for them. So yeah, I don't really feel like I go out, whether I'm trying to like qualify for the US Mid-Am or playing a match with my friends or something like that. Like I really don't try to do anything that differently.
Keep it even keel and try and keep it the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are 4 or 5 hours I've blocked off in my life that I could have spent with my kids. I could have been with my wife. I could have been working on my business. I mean, technically like that helps my business because I learn some things when I play. I'm in a bit of a strange position there.
Claim it as work time.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I've learned so much on the course watching other players and seeing what's going on with myself. But I have to understand, like, I blocked off that time also, like, this is recreation. Like, this is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And like, I like my version of recreation could be a little bit more hardcore competitively. And that's cool for me. For other people's, it might not be. You want to go out and drink like 3 or 4 beers with your buddy and smack your driver around and don't even keep score. Like, I don't care. If that's fun for you, go for it. Like, I think that's great too. Like, there's no right way to play this game.
What does your practice look like? Or since you've kind of been on this journey, how's your practice developed and what does it look like now? Whether that's just generally in the kind of regular season or even if you're gearing up for a event that you want to do well in. I mean, how do you kind of approach practice and improvement more broadly in terms of playing time, hitting balls, working on your short game, all that good stuff?
So I think personally, I've gotten to a level where I've worked enough and I put in enough hours over the years where I think I've got my skills to, like, I'm not going to have any more major breakthroughs in terms of like ball striking. Like, it's just like little things. So if anything, I split it into like off season and in season. So for me in the off season, like, I can hit balls at home. I have, a cool little simulator set up. So I'm just trying to like preserve my skill. So I have a sky track. I'll go hit balls on the sky track. I'll play simulated rounds. I play like online tournaments, like games. They're fun. And that gets me hitting different clubs and like thinking about a target and going through a routine. So it kind of breaks up the monotony. I will work on things like ground contact. I have the cool product I mentioned before, the divot board, and there's now a million knockoffs of it. I'll work on my ground contact and I'll spray the face and make sure my face, nothing terribly complicated. I work on swing speed in the off season. I enjoy working out, just for health benefits. So, I'm lifting weights, I'm doing swing speed work just because I like seeing how far I can hit my driver. And I think it gives me health benefits. So it's kind of a double win there.
Do you do swing speed work in season or just off season?
I don't do it as much. I still do resistance training during the year now. That's something I'm going to try and figure out next year. Maybe like one speed workout a week, something like that. But to be honest, in season, I don't have a lot of like dedicated practice sessions. Like, I do play a lot. I try and play like 60, 70 rounds a year. If something's wrong on the course, I do like a post-round review every time I play. If I'm noticing something's out of whack, then I'm going to spend like a half hour, an hour working on that thing. I could be uncomfortable with my greenside wedges. I could be healing it with my driver. And then I'm going to go to the range and I'm going to say, this was uncomfortable on the course. I need to make this comfortable again. So in season, it's more, I'm playing a lot more. I'm paying attention to feedback on the course. And if I see something that is bothering me, then I will work on it on the range. But I'm not a range rat. I don't spend like 20 hours a week hitting golf balls during the year. I get bored, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So bringing it full circle, John, we talked at the top of the podcast about seeing these 7 things about practice. If you were going to go to a range and give someone advice on what they should do at the range, just to make it interesting, just to get the most out of a practice session on the range. So they've only got 50 balls, 100 balls, whatever they're doing. They've only got an hour to squirrel away. What would your advice be on good practice?
So first and foremost, take a moment to select a target. Like, think about where you're hitting it every time. Is it that pin over there, 100 yards, 150 yards? Like, have intent on every shot. And you can't get more basic than your target. If you're a little bit more disciplined, you can go through a routine. I like to stand behind the ball, look at my target, align myself to the ball as I would on the course, and then hit. And then absorb feedback after every shot. You can go as simple as the big three that we talk about all the time. You get yourself some foot spray the face with your irons or driver, see where you're making contact on the face. It's hard to get ground contact feedback with mats, but do your best. And then you're looking at your ball flight. Is it curving too much? Is it starting too far right or left? So a few ways that I like to practice is my fight fire with fire method. I didn't invent it. Plenty of people figure this out. You're slicing the ball. You're hitting it too high. You're hitting it too far right. You're hitting it off the toe or the heel. Try and do the opposite. And that will, for a lot of people, neutralize the core issue. So for me, for example, I was a big drawer overhooking golf ball for years. I have a more straight ball flight now, just trying to consciously fade it on most swings. So I'm just doing the opposite. And what did that do? That moved my swing path less in to out without actually having to think about what technically had to do that. So I'm a big fan of doing the opposite of the fault you're seeing. Another tried and true method is to introduce some type of variable or change. So don't hit the 7-iron to the same target over and over again. You can do that for a little while, but try and vary your targets, especially with wedges. Introduce some variability into the practice. And I think that will help with intent. So if you had to switch from a 200-yard shot to a 100-yard shot, it kind of like resets things, gets you a little more focused on that next shot. I love, Adam is great at coming up with his idea of, you mentioned it earlier, consciously trying to strike different parts of the face. I like to do experimental stuff sometimes. Like if I draw the golf ball, I'll hit some fades, I'll hit some low shots, just trying to manipulate the golf ball. And when you do that, it's not that I want you to go out on the golf course with like 20 different shots. I find that when you start going to extremes and trying different shots, it builds what I would call internal reference points for face control. All the things that we were talking about here, just striking it well, face control. If I know how to hit a big block and a big pull, if I know how to hit it really high and hit it really low, if I know how to strike it on the toe and on the heel, well, ultimately, then I can make those adjustments on the course when I'm seeing faults show up. So some days, I show up, I'm hitting the ball to the right most of the time. Now that I've kind of gone through all these different challenges while I practice, I have a feel that I can close the club face a little bit with. And it's not a swing thought. It's just like, Tiger always talks about his feels. It's something that's like inside of you that's there and you can access it. And I think one of the ways to do that is to do some experimentation while you practice and try different things. I think that's one of the cool things about golf too, is like, what can I do to make this golf ball do different things? Like that's really fun. And another thing some people love to do is, if you can get a good list of like practice games or challenges, that's what's cool about like some of the modern launch monitors. They have some games built in with them. I do that on my SkyTrack all the time, where I'm playing like different challenges. I'm trying to hit like, here's another one for you. You could take a target and try and hit 3 or 4 different clubs to the same target. So if you had like a 130-yard target, hit your 5-iron, 7-iron, pitching wedge, whatever clubs are appropriate for you. And you're varying your swing speed. You're doing some things in your swing. You're not thinking about it, but you're trying to accomplish a task. And like that helps build those skills. So I think if you start doing some of those, like what I would call out of the box methods, I think for most players, like that self-discovery process will yield better ball striking on the golf course than if you showed up with your camera and you're like, let's take a look at my swing today and see what it looks like and play amateur swing doctor. I think you're going to get more benefit out of that style of practice and that level of engagement versus like just thinking about the mechanics of the swing. Now, my caveat to this, and this will be my last point, I know we're wrapping up here, is if you are working with an instructor, then absolutely do what they're telling you to do, the prescribed drills. If there is camera work, if you have like quote unquote adult supervision, then that's one of the reasons I tell people to get lessons, because they can give you ideas on what to practice based on what your swing, faults are. So I'm all for getting lessons. I think it's a more efficient way to get better at this game, and it will make your practice more productive. But if you're not going to go that route, then Adam's book, The Practice Manual, my book, Four Foundations, we've got some ideas in there. There's plenty of other coaches that have great practice ideas, but get outside of the box a bit is what I'd say, because most golfers are just showing up and just rifling through the bucket with the same club and the same target. And I don't really see the benefit to that unless you have this incredible focus and determination, which a lot of people don't.
Not to want to draw you into too controversial a point to end on, John, but I just think on what you said there is quite interesting. Having a swing coach and working on something diligently with them is a good idea. Do you think you maybe get to a point though where if the swing is functional enough, good enough, you can actually dispense with that? And I'm guessing, just inferring from the way you've been speaking about it in your own journey there, I presume you don't really work with a swing coach much anymore. No, you feel like you're competent enough with that and you just kind of keep it maintained through these skill-based variable tasks.
You're absolutely right. I think I got a lot of lessons growing up and they really helped me. I was fortunate enough, my parents were able to get me some coaching. I was thankful to them for that. And that got me on the right path. I haven't taken a swing lesson in 12 years. So I'm at that point where I don't anticipate I'm going to need help with my swing anymore. If I do, luckily I have a few people's phone numbers who I would trust to have them look at something if I couldn't figure it out myself. But I think for the golfers who are really struggling, so I get messages all the time from golfers who are like, I don't know where the ball's going. I'm totally lost. I'm like, go, get a few lessons, just have someone look at this thing. Yeah. Let's get you some type of direction. And if you get a good pro, they can make that process more efficient. So for the beginner to intermediate player, absolutely, I think lessons should be part of your plan at some point. But if you reach a certain level of proficiency, then you could do really well with this style of practice, and then maybe get a check-in a couple times a year just to make sure you're on the right path. Sometimes that interaction with the coach can be really helpful for a number of reasons, and not just your swing. It could just be a conversation about your mental game or practice habits. It doesn't always have to be about technique. I think you could do both. Does everyone need a swing coach all the time? No way. I don't think that.
It's funny how people reach out to you on all sorts of mediums. We're on Twitter and feel like it can be solved in 140 characters. But John, you've been an absolute gent. Thank you for joining the podcast. If someone wanted to get hold of the Four Foundations book, where is the best place to go?
Amazon. Everything's on
Tom,
Amazon.
What kind of question was that? That is hopeless.
All good bookstores and some rubbish ones as well. Is it just Amazon?
Yeah, unfortunately, as a self-published author these days, I looked very deep into the publishing industry. There aren't, I want to get my book in stores and stuff like that. The game has changed, unfortunately. So no one's going to find my book at their local bookstore. I'm sorry. Amazon is the main distributor, and they've helped me get it out there. So it is what it is. But it's on Amazon. I believe
you got an audiobook as well. Is that right?
I do. Yeah. I made an audiobook because people kept asking me, I don't read books, I listen to them. So I went through this horrible process of listening to myself read my book over the summer, which was dreadful. Everyone hates their own voice, and I really hate my own voice. So that was fun. So you can get the Kindle, paperback, hardcover, or audiobook on Amazon, Apple Books. I think I've got it on Kobo and Barnes and Noble. So there's a few places online, but Amazon's obviously the easiest.
John, thank you very much indeed for joining the podcast.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Watch this.